You might think that the 8th generation Opel Astra is one of the most unremarkable, dare I say it, boring cars that you can buy. But now it's electric, and hear me out. I do also want to just use the opportunity to say I'm not stuck for a charge, but if I was, this is the frustration of a BEV owner. America's entitled to charge its PHEV, don't get me wrong. Hyundai over there charging, but that's it. There's one charger. This is an ideal spot for going on a dart, going in, using public transport where you can, but there's one charger. There should be 6 of these. Front of the car gets the famous by now Opel visor with a huge groove down the centre of the bonnet, hard to miss. This version of the car comes with the Matrix headlights, which are really bright. They have an adjustability on the leveler, so I haven't had any flashes and complaints from other motorists. You get aero style wheels on this car that unfortunately people have already butchered around the side. So bits of grey, bits of black, and nothing remarkable going on around the side. A couple of crease lines, that's about it. Black mirror housing, and this car has a black roof that, as you can see, loves the Irish summer dust. Charging port is on the right hand side of the car. Doesn't matter what market you're going to be in, but actually kind of works out that for once the right hand drive vehicles benefit from that. Back of the car, nothing really obvious at all to tell you this is an EV apart from that little E and no exhaust pipes. That is it, my friends. This centerpiece is a brake light, very sharp LEDs across the back. Down here is a really bright white reversing light. It's quite low down, and you have LED indicators on the back as well, but very clean, very simple, and again, nothing that shouts "I'm an EV" at anybody. Opel sign has little Opel lettering inscribed there. This is how you access the boot. 352 litres is the capacity, rising to over 1200 if you drop the rear seats. It's not huge, and it's certainly not on a comparable standard with some of the opposition and the competition. And as you can see, the Type 2 cable is sitting there because there's nowhere to store them down here. Now, some people leave these at home. I like to bring them around with me just in case you're ever caught short. So it's an okay boot, nothing remarkable. One of the biggest things in the Astra's favour at the moment is the deals Opel are doing. Now, I am an independent reviewer, so I'm not going to go into all the details of what they're doing right now. But if you buy an Astra, or you're thinking of one, it'd be a good time right now. But have a look at the website for all the details, because, as I say, I really want to remain impartial on this channel, and mentioning all the different great offers you can get for brands will not allow me to do that. So let's go for a spin and check out this car, where probably the best part about it is how it drives. Let me start with one of the quirks of the car. So if you put it into sport mode, you get the full brake horsepower of the car. You whack it down into normal and it's 136 odd, and then put it into eco and it's even less again. But I've been driving it all week in normal and it's been fine. Also, one of the really impressive parts of this car is the energy consumption. 16.8/9 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That includes the M50 at 100 kilometers an hour on a round trip of about 110 kilometers. So the Astra has a good drag coefficient. It's 0.26, which is still a figure that many new EVs are kind of boasting about because of the design of their body. Obviously, this is a hatchback, which is less of a brick through the air. I gotta tell you, the blackness kind of continues up here, and the top spec version has panoramic roof, which certainly would brighten things up. First of all, don't get this drawer. I don't know what you're meant to fit in there, but it's a finger deep, that's about it. So you can't get a phone in there. You might, just let me check, can we get sunglasses in there? Yeah, okay, sunglasses holder. End of list. This version of the car has the panoramic camera, so you can see everything, change angles, all the usual stuff. It's a very similar setup to what you get in all the other Astras. There's no fancy information about charging really. I mean, yes, you can set up timers to leave in the morning. You can go into your ADAS systems and mess around with that. Lane keep assist is one of the main functions here. One button brings you to your climate. That's how you set up the preconditioning for the morning time. Heated seat has a shortcut button here also, as does the heated steering wheel option, which this car has, and there's still some physical buttons going on. The steering has a nice weight to it. There's not a huge amount of body roll either, and you get used to these effects of heavier cars, and then when you're in something that doesn't have those characteristics, it really stands out straight away. Opel have put double glazing into the glass, so yeah, there's a bit of tire noise because there's no engine to listen to, but the outside world is kind of out there somewhere and you don't really think about it. Now you're properly on the ground in these seats, so it's a lower seating position. These AGR seats, which is basically a campaign to have better backs from Germany, come on this car. Now this driver's seat has extenders on the back for your thighs. The passenger seat doesn't. That's skimping. And yeah, it's like a gradual power delivery. It's never whack into the back of the seat like you get in a lot of EVs. But I'd nearly say it's the better to drive for that. And comparing it with the diesel version that I had a few weeks ago, I was doing just over 5 litres per 100 kilometres. The price of diesel and petrol is quite a big gap these days, and yes, if you charge this on a fast charger with ESB, for example, you're going to be paying somewhere around 68 cents a kilowatt hour. That's not including being able to charge at home. Maybe you can charge at home because you don't have a driveway. You live in an apartment, whatever the case may be. So you should do those maths as well before you decide. But it's interesting that the price is pretty much on parity. There's also a wireless charging pad down here, a couple of USB-C connectors. There's also a fairly chunky steering wheel, shortcut buttons to cruise, speed limit, volume adjustment, change the station or media source through here. There is a nice weight to that steering wheel, however. And then that's your driver instruments. You can click on what's also the wiper stalk to give you your fuel consumption, a longer version of that. That really is about it. The graphics are okay, but it's quite simple. Put some textures on the dash, but they're also pretty much black. From a charging point of view, then you've got an 11 kilowatt onboard charger. I arrived to a charger last night. I was there for about 4 hours. I had about 100 kilometers left, and by the time I came out, the car was back to 100%. And that's the benefit of a slightly smaller battery. There's no doubt this car would do more range if it had a bigger battery, but you might compromise the weight and the handling of which is actually pretty good in this car. And also the way Opel have designed the battery, it doesn't eat into levels of floor space. It's already quite tight, but they've kind of tried to mix and compromise as much as possible to make the car still reasonably spacious, good to drive, just with a slightly smaller battery that you might compare to some of the opposition, although the ID3 has a smaller battery for the entry-level version as well. And that's the car that keeps cropping up when you compare it with this, as well as obviously the Tesla Model 3, and that's the biggest problem. One big bonus of the Astra are these AGR seats. They really are comfortable, couple of different materials going on. There's the AGR tag on the side, some electric movement options, but then under here you have an actual bar for adjusting the leg space. But as seats go, these are pretty good. I'd love to see this car in the low 30s. Then it would really offer something unique, because at the moment it's muddled in with ID3s and certain Kias, and they will do faster charging. They've got more power, they've got a little bit more space in the rear, a little bit more space in the boot. But as a car that almost replicates what it's like to drive an internal combustion in terms of driving feel, like it's still 1.6 ton, it's not a light car, but between the steering and the way they've dampened it, they've actually achieved something that is quite good to drive by EV standards. And that's the little seed that's in the back of my head when I'm thinking about, yeah, it should be cheaper, yeah, it should charge faster. Although, you know, just over 50 kilowatt hour battery doesn't really need fast charging. It will still do the to 80% in the same time frame as a lot of cars with bigger batteries and higher charging capacity. And this version, compared to the diesel, has more spec. For example, this blind spot in the mirrors. Now, this still isn't the top spec. Glass roof and a head-up display will come. And whether you're watching this in the UK or Ireland, that does push it into an even higher bracket, obviously, and that kind of just seems mad. If you want to keep stuff out of the eyes of scrotes, a little bit of a tray here, and this is your park. For regen, there's just B, and your gear selector is here. I could have cleaned the back seats, but what's the point? I want to show you what it looks like after just a week of small kids kicking the back of the seats. They're dusty runners because everything's black, and this is cloth over the back here. A little bit of leatherette going on here, but that's not sorting this issue. You've got one USB-C charging port, couple of vents here, and the rear legroom is not exactly huge across the back, and everything's just black and, as you can see, easily gets dirty. I don't know if a brighter colour would help, to be honest with you, or just a more wipeable surface for small kids. Without a shadow of a doubt, however, of all the hatchback size EVs that I've driven, this is definitely up there as one of the best. It doesn't have the most power, I take that point, but sometimes power is subjective. And actually how the overall driving experience feels is just as important. Now, if you want the full-on driving experience, you're going to want the petrol, I understand that. But as an EV, this ain't too bad. When all is said and done, it's not a bad little EV that I call perhaps a runaround. The claimed 400 kilometers, you're never going to see that. On a cold winter's day on a motorway, you might see 200 kilometers. Let's be brutally honest about it. But certainly with 16.8 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, you should definitely see a little over 300 kilometers, certainly at this time of year. Good to drive, looks all right. The biggest drawback of this car, it's still a little too expensive. And if the price was to come down, as I mentioned, to the low to mid 30s, it would undercut so many cars of this size. And then it would be a real contender. Who knew the Astra electric was actually the best version? Thank you very much for watching.